Welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations That Heal. I was going to say Healing with Conversations, Conversations That Heal. And it's Kate Bartley and Keri Day here. And we're just going to expand on our last conversation that was on secure attachment. And we're going to discuss the healing part of that today. But first, Kate, would you like to give a little bit about what you do? And we'll get started.
Sure. So I'm a transformational life coach, health coach, former physical therapist, and I specialize in working with women that are trying to overcome things on the other side of medical trauma, health anxiety, just trying to get their health back, restore their peace of mind and their sense of self and safety.
Good. Thank you. And I'm a certified life coach, healing and trauma coach. For me, it's just wanting to help people come to healing and wholeness in general, really. But I do also help women who are or have struggled with narcissistic abuse or betrayal trauma with a partner with sex or porn addiction. And but it's, there's a lot of things with the trauma area in general. So we're kind of, combining both of our niches together to kind of do this work. So, yeah. So today, going on the healing of insecure attachment, one thing to mention is that it is only in our regulated state that healing and change can happen. So that's really huge. And it is so important because a regulated, flexible nervous system has a lower rate of inflammation, which is reduced risk of stroke, heart disease, diabetes, and so many other things. So this is really important stuff we're talking about here. It affects everything. Yeah. It affects our health. It affects our relationships. It affects our life. Kate, what is some guidance to help someone cope with the emotional pain and distress that comes from healing and with healing from secure attachment?
Yeah, I think even just listening to you say it that way and use those words, it just makes me think, okay, when we're in that regulated state, that's when we are feeling peace and joy and love and security, right? Like, and from that place, the parasympathetic nervous system's turned on and healing flows and restoration flows and fertility flows and digestion works, right? And
life is good.
Cellular functions that are supposed to be happening. And we engage with people and we're not closed, right? And creativity arises, all of those things.
And when we're happiest.
Happiest. Yeah, we're in the zone. We are, time is standing still. And what the question you asked me, I guess, was when we were feeling distress, emotional distress, what do we do? I think the first thing is to notice that when we're feeling emotionally distressed, we're separated from that. Something has caused some disconnection. Something has pulled us out of that state and triggered us out of that state. And so fear has whispered, right? Is what I like to say. Yeah. And so it's all of a sudden we feel insecure instead of secure. And so I think the first thing that I've learned to do when that's happening is we've got to notice what's happening within us. It's a stop and it's an awareness and a noticing. Yeah. Like, it's like, ooh, something in me is feeling unsettled right here, right? If something's feeling insecure, what's going on, and just to begin to tune into the body, find that
and being very curious.
Yeah, and just being curious, right? Instead of what we typically do, and that is what, like, trying to think what I used to do.
Push through.
What'd you say? Push through.
Push through.
Right? Stop. You know, labeling ourselves, right? Or using our other strategies to push it away and avoid it or whatever. And so I think it's healing happens when we lean in and listen, right? Just like a caring health professional would do. In empathy, we have to turn empathy inwards, and we have to begin to go, what's happening? What's coming up? Where's that coming from? Have you felt this before, right? And I think it all starts there.
Yes, thank you, for sure. Learning to give yourself secure attachment and befriending our nervous system is the main thing too, as well. Neuroception is so, that's basically what you were describing, is it's helpful because it's our body listening to whether our environment is safe. It's listening inside of our body for cues beyond brain thoughts and awareness. Right, we're constantly doing that all the time.
And I don't think we realize that.
No,
I
we
don't
don't.
think, we're going to church and we're getting irritated at ourselves for our reactions and our outbursts or our sulking or whatever's happening. And we're trying to, God help me to act, like, of course we're taught that, right? Like this people pleasing pattern of, I just need to be Christ-like here or whatever. And it's, what did you say that started that conversation? I'm going down a rabbit hole now. But it's recognizing, that yes, that this is beyond cognitive or conscious awareness. Our body's responding to our environment. So if I get on this call with you and I see you like not looking at me, not asking me questions, you're looking like you're irritated with me or whatever, right? Like I don't have to think anything about that. My body's very familiar with stored memories around those kind of interactions with people, and it's going to automatically start to tense up or pull back or shrink back, right? And so just recognizing what's happening inside of us is so important.
Yeah, what's going on, for sure. And talking about, how important it is for our health, because a rigid nervous system has an impaired immune function and inflammatory disease.
Response.
That word, inflammatory disease, digestive anxiety, chronic fatigue, depression, social anxiety, and isolation and loneliness. So that's what happens when our system isn't flexible. It really affects everything. And I loved what Deb Dana, a clinician and trauma expert who works with complex trauma, says, what if you could harness the same mechanisms that cause fear and panic to instead summon peace and spaciousness?
And we can.
And we can. So that's it, the what if, right? And we can. And you're kind of looking at those other states, all the states of the nervous system. We have the dorsal, sympathetic, and ventral, and just really kind of asking yourself, what is my dorsal shutdown letting me know? So what are these states telling me? What story are they saying? What energy is my sympathetic telling me? And my ventral system is inviting me to. I like to expand on that a little more because, there's an exercise that you can do where you can actually imagine a situation where you're in all those three states. So, and answer the question, the world is what in that state, and people are blank in that state, and I am, so whether you're in dorsal, sympathetic, or ventral, it makes a big difference. Your answer is going to be different in each state. So it's really helps you when you're being curious to think about it. And take that time to just think it through and answer those questions. It's a huge, powerful exercise we can do.
And that's probably something we can even expand on in another lesson sometime. But I think just for those of us, the listeners that may not know what dorsal and sympathetic is,
and I was going to ask.
Really, we described the ventral vagal. It's that place we talked about, that beautiful place that we all want to be. So then the sympathetic is when fear whispers and we start going into fight or flight. And then, as Keri mentioned, the fawning or the freeze response earlier, that's when we start to go into what she was describing as dorsal, which is shut down. So we all know what that feels like. We've been in and out of those states.
For sure. We all have. And,
every day, probably.
It's just, getting the basic understanding. We don't want to go in anything really deep about it. But like just taking the dorsal state, Kate, what is it speaking to us? Because I think there's a sense of, or was, abandonment, despair, disconnection. That's what's happening in dorsal when we shut down. We're in those states, right? But that's kind of beyond the sympathetic, where we're in fight or flight and everything's, and you're reacting and it's active and you feel unsafe, and your aggression, and there's anxiety and anger and panic, so that's the second state. And if you can't do that, then you go into the dorsal shutdown, really is what's happening there. Just putting it really simply for the viewers to understand better. But ventral is where we want to be. And it's, that's where regulation and safety and connection is. And it's where the beautiful space is. So Just that alone, people can sit and go, okay, yeah, I get what that means. How do I feel if I bring up this memory and I felt this way? Well, yeah, I think I was in sympathetic or I was in dorsal. And how did the world feel to me? And how did I feel? And what were people to me in that place? So it's very interesting.
And I think, like you attributed, part of the healing journey is to begin to understand the stories that are stored in our body, right? These aren't just cognitive stories that we're saying, oh, I believe this and I don't believe that. This is the memories our body is holding based on our experiences and when we've been in secure attachment or out of attachment, right? When like we could go all the way back to early childhood. If there was a time when a parent wasn't emotionally available, the child might have a story go with that experience. I cried out for help, nobody responded, or I tried to express a need and it was shut down, or nobody noticed that I wasn't, and so we start to add story to that, and the story gets embodied in us with that heavy emotion. And so we find ourselves in a similar experience like that, or a time of stretch, and all of those stories come back up, and they keep us stuck in those states, don't they?
Yeah, that's what happens, right? When we don't digest them and finish that cycle, right? Of the event, then we get stuck there, and they just keep coming up in similar situations. And it's not about the circumstances that are going on in the moment.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the questions I always ask myself, and maybe you do, is when I'm feeling something, is this familiar? Is this familiar? If it's familiar, then I know it's about the past and less about the present, and we can go.
And it almost always is, right?
Yes.
but people don't, they just get caught up in the moment of the circumstances, and they're playing out, reacting with that other person or themselves without even understanding what's really going on. And then the other person's triggered, and it's just this big mess. And just being aware can completely change all the dynamics, right?
Yeah. And along those lines, as we're talking about healing, we were talking again about that state. When we think about those different places that we're in and out of, whether we're in fight or flight, or in this freeze response, or up in this beautiful ventral vagal state where healing flows, it's so important to understand, like you were saying, the inflammatory effect or the power of healing that's happening in each of those states. And if we can focus our healing work on figuring out what's triggering us to drop down and how to get back up, that's such a big part of the solution in our pathway to health and wholeness. Because if I'm in this place of fight or flight, I'm trying to run around to every doctor, trying to fix everything, and then the energy that's in my body is blocking my healing. It's ramping up adrenaline and cortisol and all of these things. And so we're going around going, oh, we have these adrenaline or these what's the word I was going to say? Hormone problems, and where we're trying to do all these supplements and these medications without realizing that we have the power of healing within ourselves. And when I'm in that state, every neurochemical that I need is activated. My hormones are regulated. Everything I need happens from that state.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. It's true. And, and not only with that, but with so many things, everything we have is within us. Right. Changing.
Do you think we were taught that? Like,
I know. If only we weren't taught this like years ago, life would have been so much different. It's fast. It's just exciting, but at the same time frustrating because, we didn't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, playing off of that, and I think Dr. Russell Kennedy attributed this in that podcast you mentioned in the last conversation on attachment, was if we have insecure attachment, we're always looking for external validation, right? We matter when and we learn to matter by helping. We learn to matter by being empathetic or doing something for someone else. And so that kind of plays out in the way we're seeking help as well, like seeking validation. We don't trust ourselves. We don't know how to trust what our body needs and lean into what our body needs to heal, or even what we need emotionally to heal, or relationally to heal, because we're not used to trusting ourselves. We're used to outsourcing that and looking for validation out. And that comes into our relationship with God. It carries right over, right? Instead of understanding that we have love within us to guide us, and we can lean into that and find healing from that. We're looking for it out. If somebody needs to put their hand on me, and somebody, not that those co-regulating things aren't helpful and supportive, but we don't understand the power that we hold.
That we have ourselves. Yeah. So good. Thanks. Yeah. And I think too, when we're in like sort of, I'm giving a different example, relationships where we're struggling with that attachment injury, and you're feeling insecure with that person. It's not a healthy relationship in the first place. You shouldn't be in it. But you're so wrapped up. All of your real estate is there. Your thoughts, everything is 100%. You're consumed by the situation, trying to fix it, to change what you didn't get. But it's such a threat. See, people don't understand when you're in that situation, stay in a narcissistic relationship or whatever, you're 100% focused on giving to that person, trying to fix the relationship and save the relationship, thinking it's saving you, that it affects the relationships around you, because you only have so much energy and time and capacity to deal with, and you don't even have enough for this one situation, which is like massive and so feels so out of control.
Yeah.
That the people on the outside will view you as being selfish. Right? Because you've got all these things going on, and not only that, it's affecting your health. You're not getting enough rest. So just to do the daily mundane things of going to work or taking care of the house, and then the relationship, it's like, that's it. You're stuck in this cycle, and you get seen in a very different light that nobody's understanding that either.
Yeah. Well, in healing starts with energy, right? I always say this, it's like my first session I'm working with clients is healing starts with energy. And whenever all of your energy is being used to try to maintain safety, it's difficult to have the energy to begin shifting our patterns and beginning to learn how to heal. So we have to create some kind of a safe environment to allow for those shifts to begin occurring in our own journeys. Yeah.
And most of the people that are involved, none of them are really aware of what's really going on. So, which is too bad, right? But getting the support and awareness is everything, and then you can shift that and start to work through the things that aren't working. But, Can
I ask what some of your first steps in healing for your journey were?
I intuitively knew a lot of what we're talking about. I was doing those things, but there was also a lot missing too that I didn't know and understand. I didn't really understand what was wrong, what was going on with me. I didn't see it as an attachment wound. I didn't necessarily even know I was in a narcissistic relationship when, difficult seasons of my life. But I was intuitively trying to ground and reach for answers and things that helped me the best I could. So whether that was, connecting with people, I read a lot, music, different things that I feel like are kind of my passion I align with, like kind of expressing myself creatively, going to naturopaths and trying to do certain things, but as you know, that doesn't really quite cut it. It's something much deeper. So there was lots of things I was trying to do, and spiritually, and not trying to do it all on my own strength and stuff, but adding all this to it just brought it to another whole level. I couldn't have, I healed, I got better in a lot of ways, but there was still more work to do. That makes sense.
Absolutely. Like, when did you first realize what was at play? Like,
oh my goodness. So, I knew way back because it started young. I mean, as a teenager, I remember struggling quite a bit, looking back on it, not understanding why I felt so anxious and kind of uncomfortable in certain situations and relationships, like even in dating. I was just like, that's what it was, right? There was a fear factor there, not really knowing why. And then by the time I got to, must have been around 20, I was having major panic attacks. So then I really knew, and I was kind of living my life in a way that wasn't really taking care of me, partying and going out with people and, drinking and things like that. And so because of my system being so sensitive, it just made it harder for me, right? I was just having a harder time recovering and just getting through the days and stuff like that. And everything in me was screaming, I need help, but I just wasn't sure what to do. But I then started, I need to do this for myself, and started taking steps whichever way I could possibly think of, and,
Mhm.
continued. And so, yeah, they really did help. And then finding a relationship at that time, even though he wasn't really emotionally available in the way I needed, he was a safe person. And so, being with him for 20 years was my marriage really helped in many ways. I felt co-regulated, if that makes any sense. It's kind of a bit interesting because he had his own stuff, and so he wasn't really emotionally available, but he was a safe place. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
So
Certainty
that
makes.
was really good for me, in
Mm.
so many ways. And unfortunately, with his wounds and mine, and not really having quite the help we needed, it and eventually, didn't work. So I hope that answers your question. But
Yeah. And here you are today helping other
yeah,
women.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just
I think
learning and
something
growing.
maybe to share is that, we can see, I think both of us as coaches would agree that the healing journey is different for everyone. The entry point is different for everyone. And there's just an intuitive knowing of our first step. And I think, my desire when I'm working with women is to help them find that. What is the biggest needle mover that will start to lift us up into that regulated space where healing can occur. And yeah, it's not something that we can go ask for a written prescription for. We all hold our own internal prescriptions, and it's a matter of leaning in and finding it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It can be a painful time for sure, and an exciting time as you're seeing what's working, and how it all comes together. But there was a big gap of time of just, knowing there was more but not knowing what that was.
Mhm.
Right. So
Mhm.
that's why I'm just so, thankful for the things that came, and yeah,
Mhm.
this work.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
how about you? Anything you'd like to share for your
I think,
journey?
along those lines as just healing steps, I think for me, writing was a big piece of it for me. Journaling was a big piece of it for me, actually, or I think it even started with recognizing that, there was something in here, feeling seen and heard in this loving, witnessing presence. We can't get that if we aren't willing to be vulnerable. So somehow we have to get over that risk and get into expression. And for me, I had to overcome shame of just expressing myself honestly what I needed, which is, that sounds crazy, right? But it was big for me to go, I need to step back from this job. I need more space in my life. I need to
Yeah.
write. And I
Yes.
knew intuitively that I needed to, but I didn't understand the healing power of it. I didn't understand that it was what I needed to be a loving witness of myself, to process my emotions, to allow myself to feel what I was feeling, to get perspective, to get into just reconnect with myself, right? Like to ground in that for a little bit.
It's a great, powerful modality. I did a lot. I can't even imagine. I guess I'm so used to it being, it's just so stuck in nature, writing it down, my feelings, or, just in conversations or things in relationships. Just, yeah, being able to write it down, process it, and explore with it. It was super powerful for me.
Yeah. And I think, some people, I don't know about you, but it gave me the freedom to express emotion, to express anger and bitterness, and say what I needed to say and get it out of my system, right? Like, when we talk about trauma, part of trauma is we've got a lot of stored emotions that are getting stuck in us, and they're blocking things. And we heard in a conversation the other day with women, like we didn't feel safe to express anger, and anger will man, repressed anger is really harmful for us. And so those journaling spaces, I am angry and I am mad, and, getting it out of the system, and then finding out what's underlying that. What else is under there? Is there some sadness? Is there some pain? What's under there? So important.
Yeah, right.
And guiding ourselves, reparenting ourselves, attending to ourselves. Oh, wow, I hear you. What let you know that, What do you need? How can I support you? Not waiting for somebody else to meet that need, but beginning to lead ourselves in that way. I think that's what I learned to do for myself, and I still do. It's a regular practice. I can't not. So, yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And I think it also helps the writing part. If we didn't feel like we had the validation from the person close to us that we needed it from, somehow it was giving validation to ourselves by writing it down. Something was happening within us, so, and then maybe sometimes you may have shared it with a girlfriend or something like that, and then you got more validation there. But Yeah, just keeping it all bottled up isn't healthy, right?
Yeah.
So.
And that word validation, I think, matters a lot. Like, instead of seeking external validation, which sometimes we need, like, hey, how am I doing? Like, let me know if this is, what I'm putting my time and energy into is working. But that validation, that acknowledgement of our experience is so important. Just like a child needed their needs validated, right? They needed their expression and their cries validated, heard, witnessed, responded to, acknowledged.
Yeah.
It's our opportunity as adults now to do that for ourselves. And then from there, we can learn to ask for what we need as well from others.
Yeah. Reparenting ourselves. It's a good thing. And we can do it. Sounds strange, but we can reparent and get those core needs that we needed back by ourselves. Yeah, for sure. Good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think that's a wrap up on our part of this conversation too. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Sounds good. Bye, Keri.
Thanks. Bye-bye.